Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Venom vlog, and I am here live with our guest, Geoff Thorne. Geoff, thank you so much for making time and being on the show today.
Absolutely, man. Of course.
And Geoff and I actually have known each other for a long time. I said earlier before we started recording, we used to hang out at Golden Apple when I used to work there, and he would come shop there, and we would talk comics every week. Every time he came in,
It was great.
he would, we would hang out and nerd out together. And then when I started seeing your name on all these books, I'm like, is that the same Geoff Thorne I knew? And I'm like,
Who else
I know.
would it be?
Well, I was like, I know he writes, and I know he loves comics, and so when I started looking into it and I saw it was you, I was like, this is amazing. I'm like, as a friend of yours, and as someone who's roots for people, who have these dreams to like get back into the world of writing and stuff. It was so great to see you hit that and be back in the comic book world, and then to have so much happen seemingly overnight all at one time. And I know we'll talk about that today, but you have King in Black, Black Panther, that's out right now. You have Planet of the Symbiotes #2, which you guys should go pick up. Also Infinite Frontier. And there'll be some other things we'll talk about because he's also the new writer of Green Lantern. And this show is almost built for you because I literally have Green Lantern and Venom stuff in the background.
Oh my God. Like the universes are crossing. They're crossing.
That's right. So first of all, how have you been? And it's so good to see you, man. How did all this kind of pop up? Where did this begin? What can you say about all this?
I have been as okay. I'm one of the few lucky people. My wife was ahead of COVID because of her job. She was like, this is coming, brace up. I have a couple of underlying conditions. So she was like, you're staying in the house for the rest of your life, basically. And knock wood, if this had happened 2 or 3 years ago, I might not have been in a financial position for that to work. But
right.
Luckily, this last 2 years, we got into a situation where that's not the killing blow that it would have been. So aside from being trapped in the house for a year, I'm basically okay. Yeah, knock wood. And
That's
most
great.
of my family, a couple of my family members, a couple of our family members have contracted the virus, but they both got over they all got over it. It's like 6 of them now by now. But so far, everybody's gotten through it. No fatalities as of yet that are in our unit.
Right.
And so it's just been trying to keep working and keep your mind occupied and stay optimistic and all the things that we tell each other to do. And that part's been, it's been stressful, as everyone in the world knows. But in terms of working, writing is largely done at home. So, so this is the same office, basically.
Right.
You just live in it.
Yeah, right. Make the most of it, and that's good to hear that everyone at home and all your immediate family is doing well. Same in my boat too. Like we're trying to, especially with me, like it's like stay inside, don't do too much. So I get it. So, but it's one, like I said, it's so good to not only just see you and have you on this show, because I would have loved to catch up with you anyway, but
Sure.
to see that you're also doing all these great comics and characters that I love and characters that I built my entire YouTube channel around. It's so great. So like, yeah, it was meant to be.
I agree. I mean, how did it all happen? Well, let's see. It's sort of a two-pronged thing. The Green Lantern stuff was very long. It started way back at the final days of 5G at DC Comics. This is very long and bizarre stories cut short. I was asked to come in and pitch stuff by Dan Didio's office. I came in and pitched a bunch of stuff, of which, of course, let's say I pitched them 17 different things. 16 of them, they were like, we're not doing that. You're out of your damn mind. But this last one, this John Stewart idea, we like that. It fits sort of with the plans that we have. And I was like, and then they showed me the plans and my brain fell out. And I was like, you people are mad. This is madness. I love all your plans, but your fast rollout, I mean, God bless you, but I don't want to be in this building when you do this. I want to be far, far away from you. But sadly for Dan, obviously, and frankly, a bunch of other DC employees, there was a purge. and I thought all that would go away. All the stuff that I sold them a pitch basically. I wrote up a pitch. They bought it. I figured once Stan was out, everything would die. But the new editorial powers that be were like, no, we still like it. You just remove these 3 things that you were going to do, and that fits in with the new plan. And I was like, okay. So while I'm writing that, they decided they were going to do Future State. They said, we would like you to contribute to that. I said, well, it is Future State. They said, basically, you're going to flash forward, in your case, about 15 years from the present day in your storyline. And I was like, this storyline is kind of crazy. You know that far ahead, it won't resemble anything anyone recognizes as a Green Lantern story. Right? Like, they're going to have gone through so many changes 15 years from now. Holy crap. Right? And they're like, we don't care. Just do something interesting and exciting and have a ball. So that was Future State. And then I went back to back to writing the actual story, like the starting now, going forward story. Over the course of that period, several things that we had all planned at the beginning started to shape in a different way. So it fell out. It wasn't the design, but it fell out that I would be the sole writer on Green Lantern, and that it would be a single book. And it was like, I was like, my little story is now going to just be Green Lantern. And they're like, yep. And I'm like, okay. You know, and so that's where we are. And I'm making it sound sort of like it was forced upon me, but it's more like they ask you, do you wish to? And sure. I'm like, in the back of your head, you're sort of looking at all the work you have to do elsewhere, and you're like, yeah, but they're offering you to do Green Lantern, man. You gotta, you kind of have to say yes, right? Yeah, so, so that's what that is. And they just dropped the Infinite Frontier Zero, which is sort of a literally, like, it's not even the teaser. It's almost like a teaser trailer. Like, barely anything happens in my 3 pages, but it sort of sets up, these are some of the new faces. There's a big cosmic event that happened in the Superman book. Basically, DC has decided the future society that the Legion of Superheroes occupies, the United Planets, that begins now in our century. So this is the first days of this new idea. And the Green Lanterns, the Guardians of the Universe, and the Green Lanterns have basically been the police force for multiple galaxies forever. Like, so this one group of people are like, well, we don't know where you guys fit in the new paradigm. We should probably all discuss where you fit, if you fit. Do you want to fit like that? You're going to just keep doing what you've been doing, or you're going to fold into our thing? And so we're setting up this sort of big sort of United Nations meeting that takes place on Oa. Everybody's going to be there. All hands on deck for the Green Lantern Corps. Basically, everyone who was in a sector that could be sort of left alone for 2 days is on Oa. So about 5,000 Green Lanterns are on Oa, like physically present.
Your poor artist.
And it's all Dexter Soy is, I know, you know what, poor Dexter and poor Tom, because in the Future State, right, the planetary evacuates. I'm sure this poor man was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
It's a cast of thousands. Literally every other panel, there are thousands of people. Draw. And I'm like, hey, I'm sorry, the main book won't be like that. And then the main book, the first few issues are giant alien conclave happening on Oa. Everyone is here, you know. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm sure these artists are like, what? Who is this guy? What a jerk! But you got to start things off with a bang, so we do.
Sure.
And there were some things that were not part of the original story. I did not know the Teen Lantern existed until they told me. So I went and did a deep dive research on her. It wasn't a lot that had been developed about her, so I'm kind of getting to be the person to flesh her out in the story. And the Far Sector Lantern, Joe Mullane, Far Sector, I think, is basically a perfect comic book.
True.
Not necessarily a perfect Green Lantern comic book exclusively, but it's sort of like someone who'd never come in. A rookie player came in and just every time they're at bat, knocks it out of the park to the point where the other team's like, Jesus, this chick again? Oh my God. Like it's perfect. The art's perfect. The story's perfect. The voice is perfect. So coming in as a writer who's going to be one of the people to take over that character. I would have been the first, but there were some people in Future State who got a crack at her before I did. Right. To sort of maintain the voice that Nora Jemisin set up and to honor that character, as I independently of this, long before they offered me this gig, I was like, this is a perfect freaking comic book. That doesn't come along very often.
Yeah.
This is perfect. I have no complaints about it at all. I only want more of this. Right. And now I'm writing more of it, or her story anyway. So, I mean, I'm putting more pressure on myself than probably I should in that regard. But she's gonna be a main feature in the book. Kelly the Teen Lantern is going to be a main feature in the book. Simon Baz is going to be a main feature in the book. He's been sort of sitting on the shelf for a minute, and the difference between what has come before and what is happening with this book is, I've said this in a couple of other interviews. Some people are mad because I don't like Hal Jordan, whatever. But it's not even about all that. It's just it's going to look outward. It's not, most of what's going to happen to the Green Lanterns on my watch is not going to be created by the Green Lanterns for them to fight something they broke, essentially.
Okay.
Like, they're not going to be putting out fires they started for the most part.
Right.
They're going to be go out and combating forces, new enemies, some old species, some new species. But people who them having their magic wish rings doesn't necessarily give them an edge against, like, villains and entities that are like, yeah, that's cool, it's definitely formidable, but we've got this thing. Have you ever heard of this? Like, no, we've never heard of that. What the hell is that?
What is that?
Right. What? Oh my God. Right. So, and they've announced that the battery's something's going to happen to the battery, which is going to wreak havoc on the Green Lantern Corps, and none of the other Lantern Corps will be affected by this. Only the Greens.
Oh,
so
geez.
Yeah, there's going to be some massive fallout from that whenever that happens. They've also announced that we're killing one of the Guardians. So that's not news anymore. Yes, we're going to murder a Guardian, ladies and gentlemen. So,
I mean, they had it coming.
They kind of, the little monsters. But so it's just fun, and it's going to be very outside into the cosmic realms of DC. Right.
Okay.
There's a lot going on in their cosmic space, as you see from Infinite Frontier Zero. A certain big bad is back in the saddle and worse than ever. Several forces for good have apparently been taken off the board in one blow. Right. Like, several very powerful entities of light have been like, see ya, you're done now. Right. And that is only one of, has nothing to do with my planning or anything. I have to fit my story into these larger repercussions of these things going on in DC. So that's that. And what was interesting about Future State was, I, like the audience, I had not seen any of those stories that weren't mine in the Future State Green Lantern until they came out. So I was like, oh, that's neat on some of that stuff. Like, oh, let me quickly add, that's cool. Like, we're going to do something with that. Right. So that's going to be fun. And it really is just a lot of fun. There was some controversy because Bleeding Cool sort of did a hit piece on me because of my displeasure with the whole John Stewart versus Hal Jordan situation. But
that's an age-old, but that's the thing about Green Lantern. It's just like Flash is like, everyone has their favorite. People who deny that are kind of silly to me. Like,
I agree.
Like, I don't dislike any Green Lantern, but certainly John Stewart's my favorite. But that's because Mosaic was the first comic I read from DC as a kid. So, like,
I like Wally, and I prefer Wally to all of the other Flashes.
Yeah, me too.
I was very, very comic book upset
Yes.
when they brought Barry back. I'm like, why is he back? He died an amazing, heroic death. Who was calling for this? No one was calling for this. Why is he back? Right? But there are plenty of people who have the opposite opinion, that there can only be one Flash and it must be Barry Allen. Right? I presume the Jay Garrick fans have mostly died off by now. But just because of life, they're probably very old men and women.
Let's hope not, though.
Right? But you know what I mean? So, so it was a sort of tempest in a teapot from my point of view. But the truth is, as you say, there are a lot of Green Lanterns. There's 7,200 of them currently. Until one of my issues comes out, there's currently 7,200 of them. But it isn't that kind of party. No one's coming in to erase what was done in the earlier, various earlier arcs of the story. The thing about this Infinite Frontier thing is, basically, it just erases the Crisis on Infinite Earths. Like, if people seem to be having a hard time getting their heads around it, older guys like me who were around for the first freaking Crisis are like, oh, so it's just back to pre-Crisis DC universe. Basically, everything goes. Anything you write, it sticks if the audience likes it. Basically, right? It becomes quote unquote real canon if the audience is like, okay, for real, this one we love, therefore it sticks. Right. Simple. Right. That seems fine to me. And it gives us a little weird gray area to play with in terms of who's alive now, who's dead now, what alliances, what little stories are true, what nuances are real. So that's going to be, I hope, a lot of fun. It's definitely going to have much more of a true sci-fi bent, less of a not superheroes, but more sci-fi, according to DC's logic, sci-fi. Sure. That's that. And it's just one of those things you just have to say yes. Like, even if it's too big of a job and you got too much other stuff going on, when are they going to offer me Green Lantern again in my life ever?
And not only that, but you, like you said, everything kind of fell into place where you're like, oh, I'm pitching a John Stewart story. They said okay to that. I want to do this. They said okay to that. Then they showed me what they want to do, and I feel like I can play into that. So it's like the stars have lined up so well that you're like,
it's a weird perfect storm in a way.
Yeah.
What I was surprised was that I survived the loss of Dan DiDio. I just thought all of his projects would have been spiked. Like, technically, if they'd rolled out 5G, I guess I would have been part of that, but I hadn't gone very far down the road of making the story before that was all over. So,
well, I'm glad it worked out for all of us, because now I get to read a Green Lantern book by you that stars John Stewart.
Well, we'll see. Here's
the thing with Green Lantern. Like, I've actually, he's one of those characters, since I'm such a fan, I've rarely not liked a run. Like, it's one of those, that's how I am with the characters. Like I actually, my favorite Green Lantern is Abin Sur, but my favorite human Green Lantern is John Stewart. And so I pretty much take any story. Like, if I just read Grant Morrison's, I'm like, okay, it's a little weird at times, but I love Liam Sharp's artwork. And then, it's like Ron Mars had the Kyle run. I'm like, hey, that was pretty fun. Kyle I didn't think I would like Kyle. I ended up liking Kyle. So
everybody gets to take a run at it.
It's good. So he's not one of those characters. Like, I think I'm still going to love that you're on this book, no matter what, man.
I think there will be lots of fun elements. The really weirdest thing is, like many people, I was like, Teen Lantern? What the hell is a Teen Lantern? Like, what are you talking about? And before I looked at what she actually is, I had the same opinion a lot of comic book fans. Like, oh my God, really? Just to appeal to what? Why? This doesn't even make sense. But when you looked into her actual origin and what I'm now being allowed to do with her, I'm like, I think people will be, if not pleasantly, they'll definitely be a little surprised at the spin we put on her, Miss Kelly Kutel. I like it's going to be fun.
I like that she's getting brought to Oa in this issue, like where it's like Simon and her are kind of being brought along by John, and he's like, hey, we're going to the big, like you said, the big meeting that everyone's having, and it's kind of bringing her into the fold, because that was the one thing I was like, oh, that's a neat character, but where does she fit in the lore of Green Lantern? And now that you're going to touch on that,
Bendis introduced her in Young Justice, which I guess is done now. The book is done now. And they have a little confrontation with her and John, where he shows up and goes, "What's up with this power glove thing you got going on?"
Right.
She's like, I'm the Teen Lantern. I do what you do. And it's like, no, you're not. No, you're not.
He's like, not exactly.
No. All right, you're going to take that glove and hand it over to me. And she's like, I am absolutely not doing that. Right. And he's like, little sis, I'm an actual Green Lantern. I can take the glove from you. And then we're done. And she's like, just you come and try it. She's all right, power down. Right. We will revisit this, because her argument is, I'm just doing heroic things. I'm not a villain. Right. You didn't give me this freaking glove. You have no right to take it away from me.
Sure.
Right. But I would love to be trained and really know how to use it by people who know. She's a kid. They call her the Teen Lantern. She's 11. So that's another thing. The story that she gave, I hacked the battery, I built this glove. That's all a lie. She was given the glove by some weird dying alien who's like, use this, get everything you want out of it, and then hand it off to somebody quick. And I'm like, why would you give a child that?
Yeah.
So the Guardians are going to want to look at this thing. They just are. And the best way to do it is to take this child somewhere. She has no supervising. She's a street kid from La Paz, Bolivia. And she has no supervising older people over her. She is the boss of her own life. And that can't have been good. So we're going to delve into that backstory. But one thing we all have to know about Kelly so far, she's a big fat liar. So she's heroic, but she's a big fat liar.
So, she's a kid.
She's a kid. Exactly. So I'm playing her basically like, what do actual 11-year-olds act like, rather than precocious, I built my own starship from scratch 11-year-olds. She is not that. She's not that second kind. She's an 11-year-old who got a real weird windfall.
She's running with it. Yeah.
And she is running with it. Okay. So anyway, so it's going to be fun, and there'll be a lot of spacey, adventure-y stuff. Hal does appear. And not in a cheesy, cheap way. He appears, and he, as needed, as I keep telling everybody, he will appear as the story requires him to appear, and he will be freaking Hal Jordan. Like, I don't have to like him to write him well.
Yeah, sure. Of course. And people write characters they don't like all the time. The thing is, you add something to them that you're like, hey, this will make me like them a little bit, and it'll fit into my story, and it'll work out well.
Nobody should be. If only thing people will be disappointed about is if they need Hal to be the focus of the book. If you need him to be the focus of the book, you're going to be disappointed, because he's just not. But he's a supporting character in this other story. In this version of the Green Lantern. But as you pointed out, in the Liam Sharp, Grant Morrison book, it was all Hal all the time. So
it was different. It was like, there was some other like lanterns that teamed up with Hal and stuff, and we had Star Sapphire stuff. But it was very Hal focused. So I mean, like I said, I just need, if a book's called Green Lantern, I just want it to be about a Green Lantern. I don't care which one, as long as it's good. And that's all that matters to me. But I am a John Stewart fan. I love Guy Gardner. I love them all. So Jessica Cruz, like every Lantern they've added, I've saw potential in, and I've liked something about them. So I can't wait to see it.
Jess is great.
She's awesome.
Jess is great. Jess is great.
And I like Far Sector, like you said. That took me by surprise. But so with Green Lantern, my show here, it revolves around Venom, and so like shifting from one side of space to another multi space, and we go to the Clintar race. You dove into the King in Black stuff. Like, you are now writing some tie-ins for that, and one of them was King in Black, Black Panther that just came out, and then the other one I'm going to save for last, because to me, like, this this rocked my world. But I really liked the King in Black Panther book.
Thank you.
So getting that call and shifting over to Marvel and being part of an event, because like you said, at Green Lantern, they're like, here's the keys. You're kind of steering the ship. Your only Green Lantern book, you're going to kind of steer this stuff. Now you go over to Marvel, and it's like, hey, you're a part of a tapestry.
Yeah.
So
and
what
unlike
was
yourself,
like?
I know Venom, but I didn't know about all this Null stuff. I was like, who the hell is Null? Right?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, Null's this, and it's this, and this, and it's this. And I was like, holy crap, right? And they're like, and this is what's going to happen, right? And I'm like, this is what's going to happen? This is a real crossover, right? And they're like, oh, he's like, yeah, he's badass. So basically I said, look, I can't in good conscience tell you what any story. They asked me if I would be interested in doing a Black Panther one-shot. I've been lobbying for them to be the guy to take over the book after Coates leaves. And obviously I'm not going to be that guy. But I guess as some sort of consolation prize, they said, well, we've got this event coming up. Would you like to take a shot at this 30-page one-shot? And I was like, 30 pages? Yes. So, but I didn't know anything about it. So I asked them can I please have, because nothing had come out, obviously. They just announced this event was coming to the public. I said, what have you got drawn? What have you got written? I need everything so I don't contradict or screw up. And at that point, I think all they had was all the backstory stuff, which you just know, which I did not. And I think the first 2 issues had been drawn, right? Okay. So I got the pencil and lettered pages for that. And so I looked at all that and I went, oh, okay. This is the story. And it's basically the story you read. They were like, yeah, tell this story. This is crazy. So I glossed over a couple of things, like the hand of Bast was sort of, and then some technology is employed to fight the dragon, was basically the line.
Okay.
But one of the things that happens, obviously, in the main storyline is Null eats Storm pretty much right off the bat. Yes. They think they've got this big edge, and her and a bunch of other people go to fight Null. And Null's like, are you stupid? I'm Null. Like, you think I've never danced this dance before? See you, Sentry. And oh, you're adorable, you little mutant weather chick. Nice snack for Null, right? So I figured that even though they're not technically together right now, witnessing something like that would affect T'Challa's mind greatly. Like, it's more like they're breaking up because circumstances and tribal issues are keeping them apart, rather than in a perfect world we'd be together. So that means he still loves her, from my point of view. Now, full disclosure, and this is proof to anyone who this should be work as proof to anyone who's worried about how I'll treat Hal Jordan. I hate Storm and T'Challa being a couple. I've hated it since it was introduced. I have never liked it. I've told Reggie Hudlin multiple times to his face, I think that was a mistake. I don't like it. I'm not for it. I think she should be in her own place, and he should have his own people, and the book should the X universe is just too big and unwieldy and powerful to be mixed with anything else. Like, it's not good for either character. But it's not up to me, right? I'm just a fan going, I don't like this. And then this happens. So what is true, what is canon, what is inside the story is these people loved each other deeply. Circumstances forced them apart over and over again to the point where they can't be together. He witnesses, because he's in New York, right? When all this is going down, he's with the Avengers at this time. He witnesses the loss of this woman. Like, we think we're going to just win this. And then, oh, dear God, and then he's got to go home and save everybody else.
Right.
So he has a split focus at the beginning of the story. And he has to keep reminding himself, you can't have a split focus. That's done. You didn't save her. You failed to save her. Now you've got to save these people. And that's basically the hook of the story, is how much of himself can he shut off in order to make this plan work. And I mean, Germán is a ridiculously talented artist.
Yeah.
And Jesus, the colorist, is basically, when we saw what Germán refers to as here are my thumbnails, I was like, we could just publish this. Like,
Yeah.
his thumbnails look more painterly, right? They don't look anything like the final art, but they were so kind of complete and comprehensive that you could have just put word balloons on them and published them. It would have been a very different style than you're used to from him, but people would have accepted it. I was just like, okay. And then when his pencils came in, when his penciled art came in, I was like, there's so much shading and so much sort of gray to black washes and stuff. I was like, who in their right mind is going to be able to color this thing? Right. And then I see the colors and I'm like, holy crap. Like,
this person in the crazy mind.
Oh my God. Right. Plus, I asked a lot of questions about how Null's powers work. And they were like, yeah, we do have some very firm notions that are written into this Bible, essentially. But on the other side of that, we want the creators on the tie-ins to have more leeway to flex with it a little bit. And so I was basically treating it almost like halfway between a viral plague and a zombie attack. Right. With Null sort of being able to work some of them like puppets as needed. Right.
Like
he could talk to you.
Yeah, because I think Shuri refers to it as an infection, right?
Yeah. Shuri calls it a pattern of infection. And then at some point, Null takes her over and is talking as if it's Shuri. And she keeps saying things to the child. It's like, you're not my sister. I'm just talking to Null. Right. One of the fun things I find fun as a fan is that a lot of people, two things happen. The opening bit, people ask the question, well, if the Wakandan warriors had these sheaths, why were they not already wearing them when T'Challa showed up? Why did he have to tell them to wear the sheath? And I point them to a few pages later when he says, I lost half of them getting home. Right? The sheaths don't protect against Null's symbiotes. I mean, they have minor protection, but they were not the thing. What the sheaths were for is, he says, everybody sheath up, and they do, and then he releases this force pulse.
Right.
Which sort of scatters and blasts all of the symbiotes away from everybody. But if you look at Germán's art, all of the warriors are just standing there. When the pulse happens, because they've sheathed up. It's all quasi-vibranium. It eats the pulse, powers up their weapons, and then they haul ass for burning Zana. But and then the other thing was, what was the other thing? So that was that thing. There was something else people were having an issue with, and I couldn't remember what it was. And I'm like, it's all in there. It's all in there. Using Claw's sound thing, Shuri doing the alchemy. It was just a lot of just fun. In my head, everything was Jack Kirby. So I pictured what if Kirby was drawing this all the way through this book. Like that was like, I even refer like this, like even the construct, I'm like, the Hand of Bast, I was like, this is not a what do you call it? The giant robots. It's not one of those.
Oh, right? Okay. Yeah.
It is a Kirby energy beast with energy like bleeding off of it as it moves, right? Kirby crackle everywhere, right? And so in my head it was drawn by Jack. But the fun part of working with these great artists is that was what was in my head. What was in Germán's head is what we saw. That's his interpretation of me describing that way. And man, when that thing comes out of the ground, I was just like, oh, damn. So it was just a lot of fun. I see in subsequent issues of the main story that people are having a hard time placing where the Wakanda events occurred, because when the Silver Surfer shows up, he has to pierce the global bubble.
Right.
My feeling is that means the Black Panther stuff has to have happened basically right after that.
Okay.
Because if the Surfer got there and there's already a bubble, there was already a hole in the thing.
Yeah, right.
Right. So it has to have happened after that. But other than that, we were not held to a restrictive time limit in any, or at least I wasn't. Like it had to be between these two events or whatever, because we know Storm and all the other people that got rescued. So, and the Panther wasn't part of that. He was back home saving Wakanda. So,
So yeah, you have these like you have these bookend limitations of like, all right, here's where this starts and this is where it's going to end. So I can't affect these things, but you have all this to play with. And actually, I put my review of that issue up last week, and that's what I was telling everybody. I said, if you have a friend who saw the Black Panther movie and they haven't read a comic, I said, this is a really easy thing to pitch them. You could say, hey, remember in Infinity War when Wakanda was invaded? Well, what if they were invaded by symbiotes? Check out this comic book.
There you go.
And I love the look of it, and like the art of it. They kind of like it pulls from, like you said. I know in your head you see Kirby, and then what your artist saw was more like it felt like the movie universe. It felt like an extension of the movie universe.
I agree, and it very much was my idea to rephrase this. How do I phrase this properly? It was my idea, but I wanted, my approach was what you just said, was to try and make it like a discrete Black Panther centered film, basically, so that have a beginning, the problem laid out, you see the obstacles, you get a weird wrinkle when what happens to Shuri happens, you get a weird reveal that he's going to use this weapon in a way that's not been used before, and something you're told is a liability for the first half of the book turns out to be the thing that helps save them at the end. Right. And it's all, like you said, it's all encapsulated. This could be somebody's jump on book. If you've never read the Black Panther before, or only knew him from the movies, you will not be lost in this book at all. So
it's funny you talk about feedback you got from the book and how people like miss things here and there. I'm thinking about my review of it right now, and I literally had one criticism, and then I immediately but here's the thing is I had it, and then 2 seconds later I devil's advocated myself and was like, well, then this actually knocks that out. But my first thought was, and this wasn't a negative, it was just like an observation. It was like, oh, this feels like you could replace the symbiotes with like phalanx or a zombie outbreak, and it would still be the same story. But my counter to that was that you actually put a line in there where you described from T'Challa's point of view his research on the symbiotes and how they were very similar to unstable molecules. And I said, you couldn't have written lines like that, which there are a couple in the book, if it wasn't symbiotes. So I immediately went back and said, nope, you can't actually replace it in this case because he put in these little lines that makes it very symbiote, which is
awesome. You'd have to have solved the problem differently. Like the weapons that were employed were very specific to this fight. And the Hand of Bast got a little bit of static about what it can't kill the Phoenix. And I'm like, I didn't say it could kill the Phoenix. I said it was built to kill the Phoenix. That's not the same thing as it being able to kill the Phoenix. Right? They've never used this thing before. They've literally never used it on anything before. It's a prototype. So if the Phoenix had shown up, would this thing have been able to kill it?
Right. And I love that too, that it was that specifically because it ties Ulysses' claw into it. And I love that line where T'Challa goes, all right, Ulysses, it's time you pay back your debt to my country. And I'm like, that is so freaking awesome that he's like, I'm going to take my enemy's weapon, something we haven't really messed with, and I'm going to have faith that this thing, there's a reason. It's one of those. Yeah, it's one of those, like, there's a reason for everything stories. And so he has this weapon and he used it and it saved the day. And I'm like, that's so freaking awesome. So yeah, like I said, that was my one criticism and I immediately kicked myself away from it. So I found it to be a really great book, man.
I thought it was a great crossover too. The people seem to be responding to it well. A lot of these crossovers, nothing against them. People have their favorites. I'm not going to single any particular crossover out, but there's a lot of in the fan communities. They're like, "Oh Christ, another one of these damn crossovers," And they don't affect anything.
All of them. Yeah.
They never change anything that sticks. They never make any meaningful. It's like, and I hear it, and I can't say I haven't been a participant in that conversation, depending on the different thing. And I do think there are just too many of the damn things. But the problem is there's always a sales spike. So from the company point of view, whether we say we don't like them or not, more people buy more books during these crossovers. So stop buying them if you don't want to see them. But in this case, it's just really fun. Like when he killed the Sentry, I was like, oh, damn.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like an offhand kill, like, oh, no, sorry about it, guys. No, and then the big Captain Universe reveal, I was just like, come on, this is a well thought out, well executed story. I'm seeing the feedback on the other tie-in books, and apparently we're all quite different in our
Yeah.
approaches to it, which
Mhm.
is also weirdly proof of concept that Null is such an interesting, expansive villain that all of us could take these different shots at what is it
Right.
like to be attacked by Null, essentially. And
Right.
they're quite different, but nobody went, it's wrong. No one in the audience went, well, that's not right. They were, oh,
Well,
that's
sure.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which in other crossovers, you're like, well, she can't do that. Why do they have her flying? She can't fly. She jumps. Everyone who reads this knows she jumps, right? But she
Right.
needed to fly in that one moment, so she can fly now. Except after the crossover, she can't fly again, right? So so that was great fun, and it was nice. People have been saying, "Are you going to be the next writer on the Black Panther?" I am not. I don't know who it is.
I wish, because after reading this issue, Marvel, if anyone at Marvel's watching, like, I like Ta-Nehisi, and I love the stuff he's done and everything, but I am a fan of what you did in this one issue, and it made me go, oh, I want to read more stories like this, big time.
All I know, and I can't even say this, but I know at least a couple of people who it's not, and I know one of those people is me. I am not the guy. And I'm not trying to undercut whoever comes next. I wish them well. I can't wait to see what they do. But I've been really gratified by the response, because I didn't set out to do this. I thought this was my one shot to get to do an official Black Panther comic book, so I'm going to make it the best I can.
You did great.
But I didn't have any designs on anything beyond that. So the idea that other people are saying, hey, are you the new guy? I'm like, I'm not. I'm really not. And if this is the last I ever get to put my hands on, in continuity 616 T'Challa, I'm good with it. This was a really fun book for me too. Like, to see the art coming back, and just like, it turned me back into a fan while I'm reading something I wrote. I'm like, whoa.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
that's a good feeling. And
it is.
And you, so Marvel, if you're not gonna have this amazing person doing Black Panther, could you at least have them do more Hobie Brown stories?
Oh my God! Where did that come from?
I've been a fan of Hobie Brown since I was a kid, and I always loved the character. I always saw great potential in him. And then I remember in the 90s when Mike Wieringo got his hands on him with the art, and they told the Paste Pot Pete story and everything. And I was like, I really, really love Hobie. Like, when is someone going to do something great with him? And I remember at one time when I worked at Golden Apple, I had actually stopped a criminal or a guy from stealing copies of Amazing Spider-Man 700. And Steve Wacker, the editor at Marvel, he wrote me a really nice message and was like, hey man, that was really awesome what you did. Ryan at Golden Apple told me you stopped a guy. He came in, grabbed 10 books, ran past Sharon, yelled at her, and then ran out the store. And I chased him outside and grabbed the comics back. And Steve Wacker's like, that's the most Peter Parker thing ever. And
Steve's great, and that's true. Jesus, man.
And
Holy crap.
He was so nice and so awesome. And then I think at one point he asked me, who's one of your favorite characters? I said, Hobie Brown. I said, I want to write a Hobie Brown story at one day. And I said, I'm a big fan of what you guys do. And he said, well, Dan Slott has plans for him, so we can't do anything right now. And so I was like, okay. And I just went away. And then I didn't see Hobie for years. And then I saw him as Spider-Man for a day. And then he died and became a clone or something. And I was like, I can't keep up with all this. So when I saw a viewer of mine, his name is Eddie's Mullet, who watches this channel, and he's so awesome. He's the nicest guy. He's a soldier. He defends our country, and he was deployed. And he came back from deployment recently and said, hey, I picked up Planet of Symbiotes #2. If you haven't got it yet, get your butt to the store and read it. You are going to freak out. He's like, because I've probably talked about Hobie, even though I do a Venom show, I've talked about Hobie and the Slingers a dozen times.
Listen,
at least.
You are preaching to the choir, brother. I am like you. I am a down for Hobie Brown. I am a Prowler fan from way back. I love the Prowler. Not to knock any of the writers and artists, the creatives that have been on him or used him in the various things that they've done with him, but
Right.
he's fallen into that category of he's an interesting flavor. Let me do this with him to serve this other story.
Right.
And that has sort of had him kicking around the Marvel universe a lot. And then when Miles Morales showed up, they made the Prowler his uncle for various reasons.
Right.
When he was in the Ultimate Universe, they did that. And then when they brought him over here, they brought all of that mythology over with him. And I'm like, well, where does that, in my mind, I'm like, where the hell does that leave my boy? Because he's the freaking Prowler, right?
Right.
And then the movie came out, which cemented in the general public eye, this guy is the Prowler. They don't know from Hobie Brown. They've never heard of Hobie Brown. So
Right.
I'm guessing for product synergy, it's like Hobie can't be the Prowler anymore, which
Right.
to me broke my heart because he'll always be the Prowler from my point of view.
Yeah.
But the way this happened is this, and this is one of the three things that have happened have not been me seeking a job. This, the Vixen story, and the Black Panther King in Black came from the outside to me.
Okay.
My relationship with Marvel comes from the Spider-Man editorial group.
Okay.
You know how they're broken up into little kingdoms, and
Right.
Spidey has his kingdom, the Avengers have theirs, and so on. So
Right.
almost all of the work that I've done at Marvel to date, technically Null comes from the Spider-Man. Exactly. Yeah. So because of Venom, right? So one of their editors had called me up in the past, and I did a couple little one-shots when I was working with Axel Alonso. The place we settled was on Mosaic, which ultimately ended up into the Spider-Man part of the Spider-Man universe, even though he's an Inhuman, because he took over Spidey at one point. Right. So, so I had a sort of relationship with them, but Marvel is different than DC in some ways. One, because of the massive success that they've had in other media that maybe people have heard of, they are less inclined to get back to you on pitches, or at least to me. It will be a long time between you sending in something as a pitch and then getting a response, because they just got a lot going on, right? After a certain point, I don't know if I forget about it, but I'm kind of like, okay, I guess that's the answer. You know, it's been 6 months, so I'm guessing they're not saying yes to whatever the last pitch was. So at the time where the Hobie thing showed up, I figured I was done at Marvel. I just figured, nothing against them. I've had a very nice time with them, but I figured the last bunch of pitches obviously didn't cut it for them, and that was it. And then I get this call out of nowhere, or email out of nowhere, like, hey, look, we were having a big group discussion. Hobie Brown's name came up, and immediately your name came up because you keep pitching his Prowler story. Seriously, dude, you don't even know how many Prowler stories I pitched these people. And there's always somebody else doing something with him at the time that I'm pitching. And I'm like, oh, Newman, right? So they're like, look, we know you love Hobie, and we've got an interesting sort of spin on him if you're interested. And I was like, well, I'm always interested in Hobie, but it sounds like you don't want him to be the Prowler anymore. I can get this vibe off. So when they were like, well, let's talk. Right. Because I was like, I'm not interested if he's not the Prowler. I was really firm, like, if he's not the Prowler, I don't want to hear about it. Don't tease me. Right. And they're like, well, we should just talk. Let's freeze on that, Mr. Excitable. Let's talk. And so we had this long discussion, and apparently they were like, we also like the Hobie Brown character. And it came to our attention that he had designed other identities for Spider-Man back in this one arc. And I was like, oh, it's the pre-Slingers arc. Absolutely. When he was wanted for murder and he had to be all these different people in order to, yes. They're like, you know this? I'm like, I am a geek. Of course I know this.
Yes, youngling, I know that.
Yes. So I'm like, okay, I'm with you. What's up? And they're like, well, we were thinking he would take over for one of the Slingers roles, since he's the one who constructed the outfits. And I was like, you figured a way to thread the needle. You're not wrong that I would want to write that, because he's not the Prowler, but he's also is these other guys if he wants to be.
Yeah.
Okay. So we started talking, and it ended up that the Hornet was the best of that group. I don't particularly like the Prodigy costume that much.
Sure.
It would need a massive redesign, which is not what they wanted. Also, the power set is like, and there's another character called Prodigy on the X book right now. Probably don't want to mess with that. Never fight the X. And you will lose, my friend.
The X wins.
The X wins. The X gonna give it to you. So we started talking about it, and I said, well, here's my vision of Hobie. He's halfway between MacGyver and Tony Stark.
Yeah.
And they were like, sold. And I was like, okay, relax. Yeah. So
first try.
And like you said, he's been through all of these weird changes. And I was like, he's not a clone anymore. Thank God the clone died.
Yeah,
Poor
right.
Clone. He's original Hobie. And I had written some dialogue that they were like, that is way too grainy for the average reader. They will not understand these references. Right. So basically my idea was the clone had died on this adventure. Real Hobie shows up, and he's like, because he had sort of like, where had he been all this time? It's like, well, I can't come back into Mindy's life when she thinks the guy she's with is me. Right. And then the guy dies. So after the guy died, he shows up and goes, okay, I have some good news and some bad news. Right. That guy wasn't me.
Yeah.
I'm me. Yeah. That was a clone you've been, I'm hoping, not sleeping with, but probably was sleeping with for the last year or two. But good news, honey, I'm back. Right?
Yeah.
And she's like, well, obviously you'd be freaked out. Anyone would be freaked out. So they're going to have a talk. And her whole thing with him is, you being the Prowler has messed up everything in our life. Right. You promised me you'd stop repeatedly. You never stop. You're like a freaking drug addict with this Prowler nonsense. Right. And in the story, he promises, no more Prowler. Baby, I'm clean. Right? Yes. And then, of course, under his clothing, he just happens to be wearing the Hornet suit.
The Hornet suit, yes.
So, and we talked about who we were going to get to draw it, and they showed me Jan's artwork, and I had not read Mr. and Mrs. X. I did not know from Jan.
Oh, it's good.
And holy crap! Yeah. Like, she drew this like it was an X book. I keep referencing the X because they kind of suck all the good people in and destroy all that comes before them. Do as we say or be destroyed. But and then you get destroyed. But I was like, this is a 10-page backup in a tie-in, and it's a secondary tie-in, right? It's not a name tie-in, right? These are like rando character tie-ins, and she drew this book like it was the first issue of something that was going to run for 15 years. So I said while I was writing it, guys, I have too much on my plate, but if you want to go forward with Hobie in this role, I would like to go forward with Hobie in this role. I would like to write more Hobie in this space. So we are waiting to see what Marvel's verdict is on that. But it is not impossible.
If I have to write letters, just tell me who to write them to.
I don't know. I literally don't know. Our editor on that.
I do know. Everyone who's watching, email spideyoffice@marvel.com and say, mark it okay to print, and then say, Geoff Thorne, Hornet series, Hobie Brown, get it done.
Let's go.
They have
with Jan.
Yeah.
Because
with Jan. I mean, please. Like, get her this book. Like, so when Eddie's Mullet told me to read this, I was like, what is he? Because he always does this. He'll be like, I don't want to spoil it for you, but you got to check it out. And sometimes it's like hit or miss. I'm like, I'm not into that as much as you are. He nailed it for me this time. He knew, because like I said, I talk about Slingers a lot. I talk about Hornet. I talked about Hobie a bunch of times. And we even talked about Peter David. He did the Scarlet Spider run. He had the Slingers show up in that. And we've talked about Hornet, the original Hornet Eddie, being killed during the Wolverine storyline. And he had like cerebral palsy, and he was killed just off panel by Wolverine. And I remember being upset by that. And there was also a girl, Eddie had a sister who became a female Hornet. And so tying this into that, especially since Hobie's the one who designed the Hornet suit for Peter anyway, it's so good. And I hope him flying around in that costume, if this ever becomes a series one day, I hope it is like a beacon to the other slingers to where they're like, who's running around in Eddie's suit? And I'd love for that interaction to happen.
Well, if the version that I sort of talked to them about does include some of what you're saying, but not exactly that way. But the fun part is too, I picture Hobie. The thing that's interesting about Hobie, and one of the many things, but like his very strange choice to, I'll get attention for my great inventions by being a very public thief. In like, what the hell?
Yes.
Like, dude, relax. But he didn't have. Stanley basically came up with one teenager and then used him over and over again, which is super genius, nerdy teenager.
Right.
Right. And we love him. His name's Peter Parker. Right. And then years later, he comes up with Hobie as sort of the Black Peter Parker in a lot of ways. But what I thought the interesting thing was, and I don't know if this was conscious on Stan's part, but since he invented him, we kind of have to assume it was a little bit. He doesn't have any of the advantages that somebody like Reed Richards or Tony Stark or Hank Pym has to sort of flex his intelligence. So you have this super giant brain and no way to use it, which had to be crazy frustrating. Using basically items you could buy at a hardware store or Radio Shack or whatever, he built the first Prowler costume and made himself competitive with Spider-Man.
Right.
Like, so I'm like, if I was an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and I saw any of this, he gets recruited out of jail. Like, you know, remember they used to recruit, the FBI used to recruit phone freaks and hackers in their teens because they were like, well, we can't do any of this crap. This kid just broke the Pentagon. Let's hire him, right? Same thing with Hobie, but that never happened. So what I picture him doing is basically every arc, or maybe sometimes within an arc, he'd be changing that costume. He'd be constantly upgrading and modifying that costume.
Nice.
And the only other character that we've ever seen who sort of changes costume like that has been the Wasp. And she does it for fashion purposes. But basically, after every battle, every conflict that he is involved in, there would be a different Hornet costume subsequent to that.
I love that. Oh, I love that. It's like a writer or a mechanic who's just never happy with their work, and they're like, I can be better. I can be better. I can be
always improve it, right? Yeah. And the thing a lot of people forget is part of the reason he gave Mary Jane designed the actual costume, the design of the costume, but Hobie designed the flying part, and he said a normal human can't wear this. You need super strength to be able to use harness, right? Well, clearly that's not a problem anymore.
Right.
So he must have been miniaturizing and improving the design and all this kind of stuff. And like you said, like a lot of writers, he's kind of constantly in the back of his, I picture him as mildly distracted all the time because the back of his brain is always working on something.
Right.
Like where Mindy would be like, Hobie, focus, we're at dinner. You're looking at me, we're dating right now. Okay.
Right.
This is where we are right now.
Yes, right.
So yeah, I like you. I just love the idea of the character. I think it's fun. I think the solution he had, even though I was told later that this is another thing about these crossovers. Some people think like the whole way that he beat Null, or they keep saying he beat Null. Black Panther did not beat Null. Hobie did not beat Null. Neither of them interacted directly with Null. They only dealt with symbiotes or the dragon, right? A lot of symbiotes, but Null never actually showed up. Null is a planet-cracking entity. I have no idea what I would have done if Marvel had said, Null shows up in person. I'm like, I got nothing. Right?
Hobie's dead. Yeah.
Like, our guys just lose then, I guess. Because, and so in this case, I thought it was an innovative. The idea was he gets knocked into the one place you should never throw Hobie Brown, an electronics store. If you expect to win the fight, do not send this kid into an electronics store, right? And I messed around with he builds like a repulsor glove and all this other stuff, but I was like, that's something Tony Stark might do. What would Hobie do? Right? He would utilize the existing system and knowledge that he has from his friend Peter Parker, and go, oh, they're susceptible to this frequency range. Zap! Right? And he doesn't defeat them. He just sort of stuns them and walks away, right? Because he knows he can't win this.
how can you look at this beautiful final page and go, Hobie won? It's like a city covered in symbiotes.
Yeah, it's like I'm going off to join the fight. I'm not like as a hero does. Like I got to get what I know to my boy Spidey because it's even a line in the story. You know he's in the middle of this shit. Like this doesn't happen without Spider-Man being dead fucking center. Whoops.
Right.
Sorry. So
hey, that's the one. That's okay. That's
my one. Okay, we're PG-13. I can't say it again. But yeah, so when he flies off to do that, thank God you said that. Because we work so hard to squeeze a lot into these this little short thing. And the visual cues are important. Like the way his loft is set up, the fact that he was wearing a Prowler costume basically with Hornet coloring. If you look at the mask at the beginning, it isn't the normal Prowler. It isn't the normal Hornet mask. He's a big fat liar. He told his wife, I'm not going to be the Prowler anymore. He never said I'm now working on being the Hornet. Right. So, and then when he gets home, obviously he has the real costume set up. But I also, because Jan turned out to be such an amazing artist and so sort of, I have different relationships with the different people I've worked with for a lot of different reasons. Being we never see each other. We never meet in person, so I don't really know any of them. But some artists are like, oh, I've got the script, good to go. Don't need to talk about anything, whatever. And other artists are like, I need more ebb and flow. What did you mean by this? Is it okay if I draw it this way, like that? And Jan was much more the latter kind. She was just sending us, well, what about this for this scene? I'm like, that's 2 panels on page 2. I know, but I want it to be, like, okay, great, do your thing, girl. And that's what I'm saying. Like, she truly drew this like this was issue 1 of an X-Men book, like, or an Avengers book. Like, she put 150% into this. So, like, going forward, if she's not on the book, nothing against whoever they would get, but I want it to be Jan because if you're going to put that kind of work in on a 10-page backup of what people consider to be a C-list character in a secondary tie-in to the main event, like, let's put it like this. I've never even heard of American Kaiju. That's the cover story. Mark Bernardin's story is the main story in this book. I never even heard of American Kaiju. Hobie's been in Marvel Comics since almost as long as I've been alive, and he wasn't the cover, right? So she still put that much oomph into this art that it made me go out and buy Mr. and Mrs. X despite my hatred of Gambit. Like, so how dare you?
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's a really good book, though. I really like that. Her art, especially. It's
great, by the way, in spite of Gambit. Only twice has that happened, by the way.
Geoff, this. By the way, I mean, like, just to say, like, first of all, I was only supposed to have Geoff for 30 minutes, and of course, it turned into a 1-hour conversation.
Oh, Christ.
Yeah, I know. I got to go too. But I just want to say, one, like I said at the beginning of the episode, as a friend of yours and someone who talked to you at Golden Apple all the time and always rooting for you and hoping more things will come on your, get on your plate and you'll be working on more stuff and seeing your name on more things. I can't be more proud and happy for you. Every time I've ever worked at a convention or was somewhere, you would always, if you saw me, you said hi to me. You were always the nicest guy in the world to me. And now you're writing Green Lantern and Hobie Brown, like 2 of my favorite characters of all time. Like, I cannot be more excited for comics. And I'm telling you, I'm nearing 40 and I got all kind of health things. I haven't really read that many comics outside of Venom for my show. And you pull me back in and seeing your names on these things is getting me to read.
Oh, my God.
So thank you for doing that. Thanks for keep
that
fighting.
Place was like church to me. I've met so many great people just hanging out at that place. I loved your comic, by the way. I bought every issue.
Yeah, you did. It was really nice.
It was fun, beautiful art. You did it all yourself. That's the first thing I asked you. Are you still doing it? Because there's so many indies out there now. I just can't keep track of everybody.
Sure.
But
sure.
I don't think I have any. I don't think anyone I've met there I had really bad relationships with.
It's a good place.
They just set up a nice house, and the hardest thing was I couldn't do it. They asked me, like, could I come do some signings and stuff? Because it's like a family over there in a lot of ways. And I'm like, COVID, I can't leave the house. Like, so I'm hoping afterwards there's some reason for me to do it. But that place, so many smart, talented, nice people came through that place.
Yes.
Like, people that people don't even realize, like, so many. And you're one of them. And I am pleased that this happened. If Twitter did anything decent in the world, it was to get us to know each other again. This is great.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And I'll stay in touch with you. And I know everyone who was watching earlier, Tavia and everybody, and Killer who was in here. Like, thank you guys for watching and supporting. And I hope you enjoy the show. Everyone watching later, I hope you enjoy. And please go pick up Infinite Frontier #0. That's on the stands now. Pick up Planet of Symbiotes #2. Which is on the stands now. Pick up Green Lantern, add that to your pull list. That'll be coming up soon from Geoff. And pick up Black Panther. Please pick up Black Panther. It was awesome.
And tell these fools to let me do this Hobie Brown book.
Yes.
You better email Marvel and tell them.
Yes.
I want to do that book.
SpideyOffice@marvel.com. Say that you want Geoff and Jan on Hobie Brown Hornet right now. And I'm going to send that email as soon as we're done here for sure.
Oh yeah, baby! I want that book so bad. Oh my god!
Awesome. Well, we're gonna campaign for it. We're gonna make it happen.
All right.
And if you want to give, to put you on the spot, if you want to give Hobie Brown an old friend named Seek that is still a scumbag, I'd be okay with that.
Dude, I killed Jerry Duggan, or no, I put Jerry Duggan in. The second issue, or the second issue of Mosaic, I very specifically have him in a emergency room yelling at the nurse that he got covered with some kind of cosmic goop in some off-panel fight that happened, and he needs to see the doctor. And she's like, "You're in here every week with some nonsense. You didn't get covered with any goop. Last week a mutant was trying to live in your chest. You're just crazy." Right? So be careful what you ask for, because your ass will show up, but it'll be in some weird way.
That's okay. I'll take whatever, man. That's amazing. That's funny. And then you guys go pick up Mosaic 2. I believe that's in trade paperback also. And that I was actually still at Golden Apple when you released that. I'm actually writing there. Really awesome. Yeah.
It was fun.
I have an Inhumans tattoo on me, so I'm a big fan.
Get out of my life. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Awesome, guys. Well, everyone, thank you so much for watching the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, follow Geoff here. I put a link down below in the description box to his Twitter account, so make sure you follow him and check out his upcoming stuff. See you all in the future. Peace.
Be well.
Bye. Oh, yeah. The ending is always, it always takes...